How you doing? I'm Mr. Keith. I teach US 1 and US 2 here at University Academy Charter High School.
What are your views on the death penalty?
The death penalty is supposed to be a punishment when a crime is committed that is so offensive that it actually compromises the moral integrity of the community. So it's meant to be a deterrent, primarily.
Do you support the death penalty?
It's almost that same concept as an eye for an eye, which to me sounds very antiquated and archaic. For the most part, if you kill someone or take someone's life who committed a crime, it's almost like you're letting them off the hook rather than having to deal with the actual feelings that are created when you realize the crime that you've committed. So I think it kind of bails people out.
Okay. Do you think that Americans attack poor people and colored people?
You mean as far as the death penalty?
Yes.
I think that the poor and the minorities have limited access to good legal counsel, so I think they find themselves in ways that they would actually get the death penalty, whereas a more prominent lawyer that would probably cost a little bit more would be able to plead them down to like life in prison without parole. So sometimes, yeah.
Do you ever see the discussion of the death penalty as pointless?
I don't think it's pointless because it's not a federal law. Each state actually has the jurisdiction to decide whether or not they have the death penalty. Like New Jersey currently does not, but they're trying to reinstitute it back. I just think that it's kind of letting people off the hook. Like if you commit a crime so heinous where you morally offend the consciousness of the public, you should have to live with that inside of you and then deal with the peer pressure from the fellow inmates for your whole life. Like if someone, kills 45 children, they're going to get the death penalty, but that's kind of letting them off the hook because the crime is so bad that they're going to expedite the charges and the trial, and then they'll be the first one on death row and then killed. What about the punishment of letting them deal with themselves their whole life and dealing with what other people think about them? That's probably a more strong punishment, so it kind of goes back and forth. It's all right, though.
And lastly, if you were against the death penalty, do you think any crime of any criminal should be punished with the death penalty?
If I'm against it?
Yeah.
You always think that those severe violent acts, if you want to quantify it, you could say if you commit a crime that kills more than 5 people at a time, then you should get the death penalty. But it's really hard to say. Like if I'm against it, I'm just going to be against it, and then if I'm against it, then my thought process is that the actual punishment of having to live with the crime that you've committed outweighs you actually getting offended. Like sure, it's almost a form of retribution for the families of the victims, but that person has to live with themselves knowing what they did. So I would, if I'm against it, take it off the table altogether.
So if, say, the guy from Connecticut was still alive, would you send him life in prison? Yeah.
Or the one from the school shooting?
Yes, the Connecticut one.
Yeah, see, like, if he was still alive, they would go ahead and kill him. He would be someone that
But
would
in your
get
point
the
of
death
view.
penalty. But in my point of view, what's worse with having to live in jail and have every single inmate look at you like you're trash? Imagine just the way you would be treated for 1 year, 2 years. And this was a young guy in his 20s. So let's just say he lives to be 70. That's 50 years of carrying that burden. Why would you let someone off the hook just because it's the quote-unquote responsible thing to do? If you let them sit there and let that marinate with them, it's far worse than any death penalty.
Thank you.
You got it.